you can't have the attackers operating at the speed of a machine out here and the defenders operating at a speed of a human in here. And so we're closing that asymmetry and closing that gap. Any business that's able to figure out this equation and execute it successfully is going to just crush their competition, because they're going to move at warp speed and their competition will still be moving at human speed.
Welcome to CIO Classified. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios, and today I'm joined by a special guest, Nik. How are you?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I am great, other than no Yusuf today, so that makes me a little sad, but we sail without him, and so excited to chat with you. You used to be a CIO. You are no longer a CIO. You are now a CEO. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all the crazy stuff happening with AI. We're going to talk about security and the CIO's role as it relates to the CISO right now. And goodness gracious, we have a lot to cover. So first, tell us about Wraithwatch.
Yeah, Wraithwatch is a cyber defense company that I started with some fellow SpaceX alumni. So Grace Clemente, Carlos Mas, we all met at SpaceX 7 years ago or so. And what we're doing is essentially building next generation cyber defense platforms for the United States and its allies. I'm sure we'll get into the strategic landscape as it pertains to AI in a few minutes here, but essentially what's happening is AI adoption is eating everything, and especially so in the cybersecurity world, and especially in the offensive cybersecurity world. One thing that you'll find is in cybersecurity, at least, the attackers tend to adopt technology a lot faster than the defenders. And what they've done is immediately suck in tools like OpenClaw and agentic frameworks like LangChain and other things, and bake that into their offensive capabilities. And so what we're seeing in the field is essentially a rapidly rising vertical attack curve that's producing pressure for organizations to respond to. And unfortunately, there's no corresponding rapidly rising vertical defense curve because AI adoption at organizations and at complex enterprises is just fundamentally slow. And so what Wraithwatch does is we come in there and we supercharge the tools that organizations already use. We break down the silos, the data silos that exist across all those tools, and we essentially turn those tools into a unified cyber defense system that can be thought of as an intelligent command and control layer. And that command and control layer is monitoring what's happening in the external landscape. It's monitoring what's happening in the internal landscape, and it's generating defenses at machine speed, because you can't have the attackers operating at the speed of a machine out here and the defenders operating at a speed of a human in here. And so we're closing that asymmetry and closing that gap.
So you went from being a cybersecurity lead at Palantir, then to SpaceX, then to Anduril, and then to the CIO of Anduril. So I'm curious, why, security into CIO is not necessarily always the most common path, but like for the CIOs out there who maybe don't have the security background, or maybe really lean on their CISO, or maybe they supervise their CISO and lean on them even more, how should CIOs be thinking about this like ebb and flow right now between investing in technology, using all this crazy best in class technology, and the security side of things?
Yeah. So my journey at Anduril was a little bit unorthodox. I joined the company when it was about 100 people, and I helped build the cybersecurity function from the ground up, tying together various disciplines like corporate security and weapon system security. So, traditional IT and OT systems, IoT, everything in between. And over the course of the years that I spent there, I just came to have a solid understanding of just what all the business processes and what all the business systems and just the complexity of that organization, especially through its phase of hypergrowth. I was just able to kind of have a cognitive model of what the lay of the land was. And I think That was one of the reasons why, Brian and company decided that I'd be a good fit to be their first CIO. For CIOs that don't necessarily come from that security background, I think we're at a really interesting point in history because we're starting to see with AI a forcing function for the CIO and the CISO to come together and really deliver for their companies. Like, if you talk to any company in 2026, their employees internally are banging down the doors, trying to get access to frontier models and getting them into their day-to-day workflows and tie it together with their internal knowledge stores. Nobody wants to go to an internal ticketing system and do Boolean searches anymore. Nobody wants to go and do SQL lookups anymore. Everyone wants to have a centralized natural language interface that has tendrils into all of these internal business systems and utilize that to accelerate their internal workflows. And so you have the demand, and it's an overwhelming demand. You have the ability to deliver it as the CIO, and as the CISO, you have the opportunity to step up and actually secure it. So if all of these three players performed well and smoothly with each other, I mean, this is a transformative opportunity to just change the way businesses execute their day-to-day operations. Now, what's going to happen is the CISO is going to say, whoa, let's pump the brakes. The CIO is going to want to deliver for their internal employees. And, just as a fundamental nature of human reality, like, it's going to cause friction as far as the adoption of these emerging tools for good reason, right? Like, if you took a look at all the OpenClaw drama from a few weeks ago, at first there was a lot of hype around OpenClaw and the agentic capabilities that it brought to bear, and it just unlocked so many workflows that were difficult for people to do manually. But then you took a deeper look at it, and it's just riddled with security holes. Security researchers immediately discovered all kinds of crazy vulnerabilities. It was leaking API keys. And so I think this is a good exercise for CIOs and CISOs to come together and figure out, okay, we've spent the last 15 years kind of clashing and butting heads. And now how do we actually come together and deliver something that's going to be exceptionally transformative, not only for our internal users, but any business that's able to figure out this equation and execute it successfully is going to just crush their competition, because they're going to move at warp speed and their competition will still be moving at human speed.
Okay, so breaking that down a little bit, and I think the OpenClaw thing is a perfect example for this, and it's the perfect sort of like case study and microcosm. They'll study this in textbooks. Do we have textbooks? Years from now. So, and this could just be any technology, but this particular one was so good. So, this guy built this thing, over the course of whatever it was, a handful of days. He puts it out there, and I don't know how many people started using it immediately, but lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people.
I mean, it sold out of Mac Minis, I think, for
right.
there.
So I was hesitant because I texted my security friend. I was like, "Hey," and he's like, "Don't do that right now." And I think that's I think that's the rub, right? It's like I have a friend who's a CISO, and so it's just like, let's just give it a second, right? Like, don't compromise yourself for no reason. And that sort of ended up being true. But on the other side is, people, and again, it's like the very first inning with all this stuff. So many people getting OpenClaw is like insanely valuable and transformative, and the stuff that it can do. So, like, this is the classic like scale or secure, perhaps trade-off.
Yeah, it's always a trade-off. But I think there's a silver lining here, and that is the same capabilities that allow software developers to move exceptionally fast with tools like Cursor and other AI augmented IDEs should also allow for the security team to evaluate them and modify them and tune them and tweak them and put security controls in place dynamically at that same speed. So again, it's almost this forcing function for the security teams to operate at the speed of the software developers, because we're sitting here talking about the kind of asymmetry between the CISO and the CIO. Well, at a lower level of abstraction, that same asymmetry occurs between software developers internally at a company and the security team. The
Sure.
software folks, they want to use some crazy new technology and it's going to help them move fast and all these things. And then the security team's like, whoa, pump the brakes for good reason. But is there a way that we can, because these folks are leveraging AI to move even faster than they are today. Okay, how is the security team going to respond to that? Are they just going to be skeptical of AI and say, you can't have it, which is the default reaction that I think a lot of security teams had when LLMs came online a couple of years
Sure.
ago. But I think necessarily as security teams, we have to figure out, okay, there's this thing. It's called OpenClaw. Here's what it can do. It can do agentic workflows and tie together with all of your data, and it's going to accelerate workflows internally by 100x, right? But it's insecure. Okay, let's take that as a challenge. And it's like the Apollo 13 opportunity for a security team to come together with the software folks and be like, okay, we have a square here and that we need to fit into a circle there, and we have nothing but the things on this table with which to do it. Let's figure it out. Let's sit across from the aisle and figure out how we're going to make this happen. Okay, let's use the same AI capabilities that we have that are helping on the software side. Let's have them break apart this OpenClaw thing, inspect it, figure out whether we can rebuild it in-house. Not saying break any software licensing and so on, but is there versions of it that we can build in-house that are more secure from the ground up? Can we probe it for vulnerabilities and have some continuous assessment process as we roll it out with our fleet? So there's opportunity here for the security team to really shine with the proper leadership and the proper kind of mandate from across the aisle from the CIO and the CISO and the software teams and the security team. I really think if you can make it happen, if you can make this fusion reaction happen, you're going to transform whatever business you are the CIO or the CISO of. I think if you're not in constant comms with your counterpart, if you're a CISO, then your CIO counterpart, if you're a CIO, then your CISO counterpart, every single week about AI initiatives and how you can move faster, but also securely, and how we can make the securely part move even faster, then you're just going to be behind the power curve because your competitors who are executing well are having those conversations and they're figuring out how to maneuver through it rapidly.
This episode is brought to you by Blitzy, the enterprise autonomous software development platform with infinite code context. Go to blitzy.com and press book demo to learn how Blitzy transforms your SDLC from AI assisted to AI native. Go to blitzy.com. Go check them out. If you're a CIO right now and someone came to you, the chief revenue officer and was like, I want every single one of my salespeople to have OpenClaw on their computer right now, on their Mac minis.
Yeah. Yep. I would probably start with, okay, who are the salespeople that are going to get maximum value out of this thing? Like who's actually asking for it? Who's sort of drowning in opportunities and could utilize this kind of augmentation. So you sort of go through a mini startup life cycle, right? It's like, okay, where do the pain points exist in the market? Identify those people, find a small cohort of them, start doing some small pilots to understand A, whether your solution can even work, B, how the infrastructure for your solution even operates, like what are all the implications around it? Have one person from your security team go through and do the evaluation on the code base, do the evaluation on the network traffic. Is it sending traffic to some crazy location overseas when it shouldn't be? And then have another person be responsible for operationalizing the outcomes for that sales team. Now, there's nothing worse than doing the security review, allowing the person to use it, and then nothing comes of it, right? Like that's not a good story for the C-suite. A good story is we did the security review. We enabled these people to use it on the sales team within, 7 days. And then over the course of the next month, they destroyed their quotas by X 100%. Like that's the outcome driven story that you want. I think that's how I do it. Start small. It's the same startup advice that, we hear over and over again in Silicon Valley, just applied internally. Do the things that don't scale and then scale them.
What about just like trying tools? I feel like this has been one of the things, I was talking to a CEO, that used to be a CEO of a $20 billion company. And I was talking to him about tools. And I was like, I feel like as a CEO right now, that the biggest mistake I made in 2020, late 2024, early 2025 was like, I wasn't personally using the tools. And I was
Yeah.
like, I felt like once I started like just trying every tool, I actually started understanding them. Whereas when you're, it's like, describing a sunrise, right, to someone versus showing them a
Yeah.
picture versus seeing a sunrise, you're like, I can't show you a photo and tell you what it's like, right? Or like how cold the water is in the Arctic, right? Like I can just use every word that describes cold, but it's not going to tell you how cold the water is.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like that like even the senior leaders, that if you're not going to try to like use Claude Cowork or whatever it is, like if you don't try to do it yourself, you're really not going to understand it. And I just, it feels like the CIO was sort of, hey, do they have a seat at the table, whatever, COVID hits. And now it's like, oh my gosh, this is the most important person in the company. And then sort
Yeah.
of like that sort of starts to wane again. And now it's like, wow, the CIO is the most important person in the company. They're holding the reins to like transform, I don't want to use the word digital transformation, but they're holding the reins to exponential growth. Um, and like, that's like, but if you're not going to personally use the tools, and if you're not getting your other peers, your other C-level peers to use the tools, are they really going to be able to understand them? Like, it just feels like, you know, it's like gone are the days of being like, yeah, I know you couldn't do a Salesforce implementation yourself, but you can go download one of these tools and start using it.
Yeah, you have to use the tools. You have to know them at a fundamental level as if you are an internal user at the company that you're the CIO of. Put yourself in the position of the salesperson that, wants to augment their sales pipeline outreach. Put yourself in the position of the data analytics person on the operations team that's trying to figure out how to ask questions of their ERP, and think to yourself, okay, if I can scale this across the company, how can I accelerate how fast we can move? It's like every CIO has wanted to have a seat at the table for a long time. And the reason that it's been a challenge is because it's been very difficult to answer the question of, okay, well, how are you going to help me move faster as a business and make me more money as a business? Now there's a clear answer.
Yeah.
Every person is going to operate at 1,000x speed, and that's going to result in, Y% growth of the company in a way that wasn't possible in the past.
Yeah. And I think that the way that you said it earlier is exactly right, which is like, this is the Apollo 13 moment. And I'm not trying to like hyper sensationalize any of this. I'm just speaking from my personal experience
Yeah.
using the tools and having our employees use the tools and seeing what comes back of just like people like freaking out and spending their weekend doing it because they're like, this is so awesome. Like taking their entire personal weekend and spending it in whatever Codex or Cloud Code or
Yeah.
OpenClaw or whatever, like these type of agentic tools, like something that I've been putting off for 6 months, I did in 5 minutes. Like that's the type of stuff. I mean, you're talking about, so like, this is not, it's not trivial, and it's not even sensationalized. I think it's like accurately like I think the stuff that is sensationalized is the stuff that gets the headlines, is like every white
Yeah.
collar job is going away and all this other BS. Like that's all
Yeah.
silly. Um, the idea that, when humans get a problem and then that problem gets solved, what they do, they go think of new problems to solve, right? So like I'm not worried about human innovation, but I think that uh uh and I don't want to say bury your head in the sand, because no CIO buries their head in the sand about anything. But I think to say like, do I need to like completely reorg my team for speed? I think that's a valid question.
Yeah. Yeah. And the answer is yes, because you know why? Because how I mentally model AI is I model it as sort of a transducer between the things going on in the head of a human and the things going on external to that
Right.
human. And this thing is able to supercharge the transduction between what's up here and what's manifested out here. Like, again, in 5 minutes, you can code up or build things that used to take you weeks, potentially. Now imagine every person in your company has access to that superpower. So now every person in your company has agency to take their creativity and contribute it towards the mission of whatever it is that your company does. So your job as a CIO now is to set the tone from a leadership and communication standpoint of, okay, I know all of you have the ability to deploy all kinds of wild stuff in our environment, and some of you are going to have some great ideas. So here's how we're going to structure how we build internal things in our environment moving forward. If you have a cool thing that you want to build, put it into this, bucket for, people to pilot or a security review, whatever the process has to be, right? But the point is, come up with a process. The wrong answer is no one's authorized to build anything with these tools. There's only a small group of internal people that are allowed to build anything. No, it's like, what's going to happen? People are going to go home. They're going to build it anyway in their free time over the weekend. And then they're going to try and introduce it into your corporate environment. Now you're going to have shadow AI. You're going to have shadow IT, shadow applications, and so on. So encourage it, but have a structure and a rigor around the process. And, whoever starts building the best stuff is going to have a process to propagate that out through the environment. I think it's a really exciting time for a CISO, but it all comes back to fundamentals, right? It doesn't matter how novel or exotic the technology is. It comes back to, are you setting the right tone as leadership and saying, here's how we're going to think about AI at this company. Here's how we're going to think about the fact that all of you can potentially have Claude code running on your machines. Here's how we're going to think about it from a security perspective. And here's what all of that means to drive the growth of the business forward and the speed of the business forward. So that's what I think. I could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong before.
Yeah. I mean, we're all wrong a little bit. Anything else on sort of like advice for CIOs right now?
I don't think so. I think we covered pretty much everything. If you're not out there reading about the latest developments in AI pretty much on a day-to-day basis as a CIO at this point, then you're behind the power curve. Not because, Nik is here trying to judge you, but because there's a CIO out there that is doing that and their company is going to win. And so I would encourage everyone to just stay on top of things. I know it's overwhelming and I know things are changing so fast, but we have two options here and they're sink or swim. So at this point, everyone's a shark that just needs to swim and do it rapidly. That'd kind of be my last say on that topic.
Do you think, I know this is it's a little self-serving for you, but do you think that CISOs should just sort of like just be evaluating like way, way, way more vendors than they used to? Or is that not a good idea?
Man, I used to talk to a lot of vendors back in the day. I encourage people to talk to as many vendors as possible. Like, you just kind of want to understand the lay of the land that's out there, right? So if someone comes across me and they're like, I'm also going to talk to these other people, I encourage them to do so. Like, go check out what those other startups are doing, and look for the ones that are trying to hit grand slams. One challenge I had back in the day and that my co-founders had was that we would be evaluating vendors and pretty much universally every single one was trying to build some incremental improvement over a capability that already existed, right? And we're like, dude, who is trying to kind of take the big swing here and solve this industry once and for all? And I'm not saying we're the ones that are going to do that, right? Like, that's our goal. That's our long-term vision as a company. And I think we're on a good heading to get there. But look for the people with ambition that are trying to future-proof organizations against this future that I'm talking about, because the future that I'm talking about is one with no precedent in human history, And I'm not just talking about cyber, right? Like, we're seeing it in the information domain as well. When the Iran stuff kicked off, the internet was flooded. Social media was flooded with just fake footage, false footage, missiles dropping in places that don't even exist. And everyone was confused. And you started to see a kernel of just like fuzzy information uptake. And
Yeah, for sure.
that,
Information warfare being
yeah,
deployed across the globe, right?
yeah. And so it's happening in so many verticals outside of security. And I think everyone's job is, okay, if AI is the technology that has burst the dam as far as exposing this latent space of infinite amounts of concepts to humans who don't have the cognitive capacity to really navigate that kind of terrain, then whatever vertical you're in, your job is to sort of be the transducer between that infinite concept space and whatever it is you're responsible for. So whether it's security or whether it's IT or whether it's information, misinformation, disinformation, or what have you, look for the vendors that are trying to future-proof organizations against this stuff. Not, we do identity better or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Maybe embrace the ones that sound a little weirder. I mean, that's sort of how disruption often happens, is it doesn't always seem like it makes sense.
Yeah. There's obviously a due diligence process to go through, but I think we're just in unprecedented times, and unprecedented times require, unprecedented vision, I would say. And so again, I'm not saying that's me. I'm not saying that's us. But look for the vendors out there that are saying similar things, because they're going to be the ones to work with you when the dam breaks.
Yeah.
So,
just to close, big news, you just landed a $30 million federal contract. Pretty incredible. What's next for Wraithwatch?
yeah, that contract is a pretty big deal for us. We got selected to go into production with over a dozen federal agencies in parallel. And, they're going to look to us to help them fundamentally transform the way continuous cyber monitoring and assessment is done. It's like the age of waiting 6 months for an auditor to come by or waiting for a red team to come by and tell you how bad your security posture is. That's done. The age of an army of security analysts parsing through your alerts and understanding which ones are important, that's done. Everything's fast. It's continuous. The CISO should have real-time answers to questions that he might have, and not take weeks to understand, what the lay of the land is for his domain. So what's next? We're gonna help the government essentially transform the way they do cyber defense and make it autonomous, continuous, and really deploy that defensive counter pressure that we're talking about, because certainly the adversaries out there are applying the offensive one.
Amazing. Nik, final question here. What's one secret that you wish, or that maybe that more CIOs and CISOs should know?
Go have coffee with everybody. If I could rewind my first days at Anduril, it's not deploy more controls. It's not learn about some new security stack or software. Dude, I would have just had more coffees with people, because the human capital that you build doing that pays off in spades 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, when you need to work with who was a lowly software engineer who 3 years later is now the senior director of, air dominance and strike or whatever. And you're trying to get, some security observability thing on his fighter aircraft. And if you're buddies, that makes it so much easier. So establish human capital, because that's the thing that's rare in an age where the machines are taking over.
Amazing. Nik, thank you so much for joining. We are going to be following along. Super excited for you, and talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to CIO Classified. This episode was brought to you by Blitzy. Want to accelerate software development by 500%? Meet Blitzy, the only autonomous code generation platform with infinite code context, purpose-built for large, complex, enterprise-scale codebase. While other AI coding tools provide snippets of code and struggle with context, Blitzy ingests millions of lines of code and orchestrates thousands of agents that reason for hours to map every line-level dependency. With a complete contextual understanding of your codebase, Blitzy is ready to be deployed at the beginning of every sprint. Blitzy handles the heavy lifting, delivering over 80% of the work autonomously. The platform plans, builds, and validates premium quality code at the speed of compute, turning months of engineering into a matter of days. It's a secret weapon for Fortune 500 companies globally. To hear how engineering leaders are transforming the way they deliver software, visit blitzy.com. That's blitzy.com. Schedule a meeting with their consultants to enable an AI-native SDLC in your organization today.